Welcome to another In Conversation. I'm going to let some people join in the live before I get started and get starting about the topic that I'm talking about today. I'm going to be doing a lot of these solo In Conversations, probably once, maybe twice a month, just to talk about policies and different things that are happening in our government and in our society, but from a deeply human level. I think whenever we talk about policy and we talk about numbers and data, we forget that there are real stories attached to all of those policies that are happening. So I want to sometimes break down a lot of those things so that we are understanding who's being affected by a lot of the things that are happening in this administration. If you watch my We Need to Talk in conversations with other people, I talk to a wide range of guests. I also write about a variety of topics, but it's always from a humanities standpoint, from a faith-based standpoint and justice standpoint, because that's what matters to me and what I care about. So if you were with me last time I did one of these solo talks, we talked about the affordability crisis and the cost of living crisis. Hi, everyone that's joining. Talked about how energy bills and insurance prices and everyday expenses just keep climbing. And, coming off of the State of the Union, we know that there was a lot of misinformation spewed from that podium about what people are able to afford right now. Inflation is up. The gas average is a little bit lower, but all in all, people still can't afford gas. And people also are not able to afford they're unable to afford groceries. The cost of living is just very, very difficult. And I talked also but last time about how it's not just an affordability issue, it is a budget issue. And it's affecting people's stability, it's affecting people's mental health, their sense of safety, their ability to care for themselves and their families. But today I want to continue that conversation a little bit and focus on something that's actually pretty personal for me because I live in California. And I want to talk about the home insurance crisis because due to extreme weather. And there's this new bill that is being pushed called the AIR Act, which stands for Affordability Insurance and Recovery Act. Now, I want to make sure that you know that the conversations that I have, I don't like to view them as political because I don't think that people being able to afford life should be a political conversation. These are real conversations and real stories, as I mentioned. These are about families, small businesses, and entire communities that are being hit hard by disasters that they didn't cause, right? And they're being left with bills that they can't afford. So I'm going to go through some of what's happening, specifically in California, because that's where I am. But this applies to a lot of things around the country. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the AIR Act and how it can actually make a meaningful difference in people's lives. So specifically here in California, we're dealing with a lot of the rising home insurance costs because of everything that has happened. We've seen higher premiums, fewer affordable options for people. Policies are being canceled. Companies are scaling back, and some are even leaving the state entirely. And I'm a homeowner here in California, and though I haven't been impacted, I know people that have been. And a lot of families are exhausted and they've had enough, right? Over 1 in 5 California homeowners are now uninsured because their coverage was either canceled or it became completely unaffordable. And a lot of those families are now ending up on what's called the FAIR Plan. And that's basically like the last resort insurer here in California. And the FAIR Plan was never really meant to carry the weight that it's carrying right now. As of late 2025, the FAIR Plan was insuring almost $700 billion in property, and that's a 317% increase since 2021. And that's a huge sign that the system is completely under strain, right? So, why is this happening is really the biggest question that people are asking. And it's because of climate change. It's because of the extreme weather. That's why coverage is disappearing and that's why rates are skyrocketing. We're seeing, ever since the fires last year, I know plenty of people that lost their homes. We're seeing in floods. We just had intense floods. We just had a huge rainstorm of several days of rain in LA, which is very unheard of, but it did cause a lot of issues for people. Then we're seeing longer droughts as well. And so there's these faster swings going back and forth between the wet and dry seasons. And then there's hotter and longer heat waves. So California is experiencing, and there are other states in the country that are experiencing this as well, what people are calling, the experts are calling hydroclimate whiplash. And that means that you swing back and forth from like really heavy rain that creates like dense vegetation and then to intense drought seasons. And then everything dries out and then wildfires happen. So we're not really equipped to deal with this. And when disasters become more frequent and more destructive like that, the insurance companies have to pay out more and then they raise the rates or they stop coverage altogether. So that's what's impacting a lot of these families, specifically in California. Looking at like the LA wildfires from last year, which is crazy that it was only a year ago. I feel like we're still, it just feels like it wasn't even that long ago. The LA wildfires of 2025. So the property damage, I'm looking at some of the numbers right here, was up to $53 billion, a range of $28 to $53 billion. The lost economic output was up to $8.9 billion. And the estimated job losses is between 24,000 and 49,000 jobs just because of the wildfires that happened in Los Angeles. And so when you look at numbers like that, it is obvious why insurance companies are overwhelmed and why premiums are going up for everyone. But those numbers only tell part of the story. And that's why I always like to talk about the human side of things, right? When insurance is canceled, when premiums triple, when disaster hits your area and policies don't cover the things that you have, it takes a toll on you, right? And we're already going through such a heavy time. So now people not only have to deal with their insurance premiums going up for healthcare, now they have to worry about home insurance being lost or going up as well. And there have been reports that people are, sleeping on people's couches because they haven't even been able to afford to rebuild their homes. People are we're seeing a huge influx in GoFundMe being launched because people can't afford anything right now. So the financial toll that it is taking on people just across the board is really, really heavy. I'm going to read some quotes from a few people that survived the fires and the floods, just so you can kind of understand where people are coming from. So this is from a resident of San Diego, because there was a San Diego flood. Her name is Marisa Aguayo. After the floods, my life was turned upside down overnight. Insurance didn't cover everything, and the cost didn't stop when the water receded. For survivors, there's no pause or reset. And this is a couple from the Altadena fires, which they are still rebuilding. Gail and Rashid Ali, they said everyday Californians shouldn't be stuck paying higher premiums, losing coverage, or relying on GoFundMes while corporations walk away from the damage they cause. Those are real stories. These are real people. And I don't think people understand. I know everyone has like a view of California if you don't live here, but those fires were detrimental to Los Angeles. And now we're starting to see more heavy rain, and now we're back to having a heat wave again. Again, I think they call it hydroclimate whiplash. I feel that. I feel that living here. And so it's unfortunate that these insurance companies aren't offering the support that people need. But again, sometimes it ends up being all about money, and it's not about coming from the human level, making sure people are taken care of. So what I wanted to talk about was the AIR Act, which is something that's getting pushed. And the AIR Act, SB 982, and what it actually does. And so the bill is actually meant to stabilize the insurance market and giving specifically Californians relief. So it's focusing on three major solutions. So affordability is the first one. The AIR Act is, I'm going to read some of this to you. The AIR Act is to help provide people from the rising costs of extreme weather that get passed on to consumers. An independent economic analysis showed that it would deliver $62 billion in compensation and create about $3,800 in average savings per household. So that would make a huge difference for families that have been struggling specifically over the last year that were affected by the fires, that are now affected by the floods, but also that are affected by healthcare premiums and inflation and ... The list goes on, right? So the second thing that it seeks to do is recovery. So the AIR Act will create resources for wildfire resilient upgrades like fire safe roofs, safer landscaping, home hardening improvements. And those upgrades would reduce any risk, and that would also help stabilize insurance costs over time. And the third thing that the AIR Act is presenting is market stabilization. So the FAIR Plan right now, which is what everybody is being forced unto, that gets kicked off of their insurance, it's drowning under the weight of climate-driven disasters. But the AIR Act would help strengthen the FAIR Plan solvency. So it can keep covering people, the state isn't left holding the bill, and taxpayers won't get crushed by the costs. So the accountability part is also what matters. So the AIR Act also gives the California Attorney General the ability to sue large oil and gas companies for the disaster costs that they help cause, like wildfire costs, flood damage, FAIR Plan payouts, higher premiums for private policyholders as well. And that recovered money would then go into a disaster fund to help Californians rebuild. So it really is about fairness, and it's about shifting the burden off of families and placing it where it belongs. We're all about accountability here, and I'm going to talk about accountability a lot. So that's kind of what the AIR Act really is trying to do. And it could also, these are important. So I'm getting to a little bit of like data and numbers here to just break it down a little cleanly. The AIR Act would generate about $62 billion in compensation, $5 billion in wildfire resilience, and again, $3,800 for the average savings per household. So when you're looking at it holistically, this could be a huge thing for California and for people to save costs and save money. So the reason I'm talking about this and why it matters, it's not just a homeowner issue, and I think that that's something that's important. It is a community issue, and whenever I talk about different policies, and even if they don't affect me, I think it's important for people to know what is being presented, how it can affect people, how it could affect someone that you know, because when when we as a society are doing better, everything is great, right? You want to make sure that everyone is taken care of. It truly does take a village. And just because, for example, my homeowner insurance has not been affected, that doesn't mean that I don't want someone else down the road to have a huge premium if I can, you know, support them in some way by supporting this piece of legislation, right? So I'm very much trying to approach policy and legislation from a human standpoint because I get people get bogged down by quote unquote politics. But again, I don't think these things should be political, making sure that your neighbor is taken care of. And that's, again, I will always talk about how my faith informs everything that I do. I want to make sure that my literal neighbors are also taken care of. So again, this is a community issue. And again, when insurance becomes unaffordable for everybody, renters are affected, small businesses are affected, the local economy can shrink, neighborhoods get destabilized, families get displaced. I mean, there's a list of things that happen, and that affects community as a whole. So we want to make sure that people don't have to choose between basic things. And that's as an activist, as an educating activist, that is really what I'm always trying to do is share why things are important, why we need to know about them, and how they're going to affect other people. Even if they're not affecting you, it's still very, very important that you know about them. Um, I think it's been really interesting living in Los Angeles, seeing community come together, trying to rebuild these areas. I've spent some time in Altadena. I haven't been over to the Palisades yet, but it really is a beautiful thing to see how the community is coming together. But now we have to start paying attention to what legislation is being presented to, again, bring down costs for people because there is a huge affordability crisis. And every new day, there is something that is rising, whether it is inflation of groceries, whether it's healthcare, now it's homeowners insurance. There's going to be something else that happens. I'm sure I'm sure going to have a conversation about education at some point because that's a really big thing for me. But this is really, really important. So I wanted to share some of the specifics of the AIR Act. I know a lot of families also that have been leaving California because it's just not affordable. And I love this state so much, and it would never make sense for my family to leave. But I know for so many families, it's been burdensome trying to recover, trying to figure out how to just to be able to be here, try to exist. And I think we're all kind of going through that a little bit, no matter where you are, just trying to take it day by day. But I think understanding these things at a base level is very, very important. We have to know what's at stake. Also, climate change is something that we have to talk about. And the fact that everything is tied together, which is something I always talk about as well, how everything is kind of intertwined, is super important. Um, the insurance companies wouldn't be doing this, affecting these families, raising their premiums, raising their rates, cutting them off of their insurance if we had proper measures in place to deal with climate. But because we don't, now insurance companies are like, I'm not going to foot the bill for this. And so then that leaves the most vulnerable people out in the cold or in the heat because we're going through climate change. So I just want people to understand how extreme weather ties into insurance instability and corporate accountability. It's all connected. It's all connected. I like to try to give people clarity over time. So talking about this, it's important. Sometimes the numbers get annoying. Even when I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, I want to share this. I think this is important. Awareness builds momentum, and community care can build resilience. And we just having that understanding is super, super important. So that's why I like to do these little like bite-sized lives to just tell you about certain things. So look up the AIR Act, specifically if you're in California, educate yourself on it, and put a little ping so you get notified when there's updates about it. It's just very, very important for people because I have a feeling it'll probably be in other states as well, but I know about it because I'm in California. So I'm going to be continuing to do some more research. I'm going to continue to educate you all about different policy and legislations that are being presented that'll affect you. But at the end of the day, all of these things that all the things that I advocate for are all about protecting people. I want to help and help people understand and talk about how we can protect people's homes, how we can protect their stability and their sense of community and their livelihood. We deserve to have systems that protect families and don't abandon them. We deserve policies that bring stability. And I want a future where, when natural disasters don't financially ruin families, right? I want there to be systems in place. I want to be able to tell my daughter, the earth is going to be here for you, but I can't even tell her that because I don't even know because of all the things that are happening with climate change. So I just want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward, keeping ourselves educated, knowing what's happening, and showing up for each other because that is what is so, so important. So, again, if you live in California, look up the AIR Act. Even if you don't live in California, look it up, be educated about that. And then I will continue to update you all. I'll do another one of these about some other policy and legislation that I have gotten wind of that I think is important for you to be aware of. And I'll see you next time. We do this little solo bite size We Need to Talk. If you aren't subscribed already, please do. And if you are, thank you so much for supporting my work. I have another Unsung Heroes coming out tomorrow. It's my last one. And then next month is Women's History Month. And I'll be doing an Unsung Heroes series to highlight incredible women. And I also tomorrow I'm going to be going live with a disability advocate to talk about everything that happened with BAFTA this week. So tune in for that. That'll be at 3 p.m., same time, and we'll go a little bit longer. That'll be probably like a 30-minute conversation. So tune in tomorrow. I'll be talking with Dara Baldwin, who is a disability advocate. So thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Bye.